Domination University. Welcome to Domination University. This is Francesca, and I have a very special guest today, Carrie Bonfitto, Two Hearts Nutrition. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
For sure. And we're actually live at you launching January 2019. So we have projected ourselves into the future. It is actually December 2018. And for your convenience, we have made ourselves available so y'all can get healthy. No messing around, New Year's resolutions, really any time of year. You should have the excuse to take care of your body, to give it what it needs. You beat it up all day long. But Carrie, tell us about your background and what you're going to share with us today.
Sure, yeah. This is an exciting time of year, right? I'm a nutritionist. I work with people to try to help them, feel better and heal through food. And so this is my primary therapy, right? Is using food as therapy. And this time of year, we always kind of need an excuse and we need a trigger to want to change what we're doing. And so the beginning of the year can be a great motivator to get us going and to really start to make those changes. So my background is, like I said, is food, is nutrition. I work with people for a lot of different health concerns. So people who have diabetes, people who have high blood pressure, who are just looking to lose some weight, or who have major autoimmune conditions or pain conditions, dealing with rheumatoid arthritis and just a lot of different things. And I especially like to work with women. That's why I'm really happy that you invited me here, because I feel like women are often the caretakers and we are not taking care of ourselves. So yeah. I really hope that everybody listening is saying, okay, this is for me and it's not for what I'm going to do for somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times I think people think about healthy eating as it's like some form of punishment, but it really shouldn't be like that.
Right. If you're eating well, you're taking care of yourself. You're actually treating yourself, right? You're treating yourself to something that's going to make you feel good rather than something that's going to make you feel bad. So if you're able to make that choice, like, okay, yes, in the moment, yes, I want 12 chocolate chip cookies. But, when I eat 12 chocolate chip cookies, I wake up in the middle of the night sweating and I feel awful and I feel hungover the next day. So I don't want to feel like that. So if I can make the choice to have, an apple and some almond butter, I'm going to be feeling great in the morning and not starting my day in a place that is already a negative.
Right. And, an apple and almond butter sounds pretty good right now. But I think a lot of times people don't know what is a good snack that's going to satisfy their taste buds. I don't think it's really taught in American culture to be mindful of the different taste buds we have and how to satiate the brain by activating that. I'm excited. And I actually took a class with you.
Yes.
It was female hormones and nutrition. Do you know the name of the class?
So yeah, natural hormone. Do I know the name of the class? That's a good question. Natural hormone balancing.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. So, it is crucial for women. Our bodies go through so many different changes every single month. We are, a lot is demanded upon us, which you were talking about earlier. And you also teach another class, cooking class.
Yes. So at Los Angeles Valley College, I have a healthy cooking class. It's called Healthy Cooking 101. And it's a great class because what we do is we get in there and we cook, number one. Number two, we eat. Yeah. So we feed ourselves and we socialize, and then we learn about why we're eating the food that we're eating. So it becomes like this experience of something you remember as to why this food is good for me, because you're actually tasting it at the same time. You're hearing the information. And so it's basically how how to make sure that you're choosing ingredients that are going to be nurturing and feeding yourself, and not being I have this term called net positive nutrition. It's kind of like techie. I don't know. My husband is in the tech stuff, so it's like, everything you do, you want to offset the good. The good should be more than the bad, right? So
Yeah.
you have to leave a little bit of that wiggle room for you to actually relax and engage in our culture, right?
Yeah.
Because it's important to be there and to be present with that, and not to be neurotic about our food choices, right? So it's getting to a point where you can make those food choices because you want them, right? Because it takes us 6 to 7 times of trying a food to actually identify it as food, right? So this is something that children do, right? As they're forming their tastes, they actually have to put whatever it is, the peas, into their mouth 6 times to taste them before their brain says, "Oh yeah, this is food."
Really?
So it's we have to do the same thing as adults, though. We don't change. So if you think like, "Oh, I don't like eggplant," right? If that's you, you're like, "Eggplant is gross. There's something purple about it. It's slimy. I don't like it."
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe you don't like eggplant the particular way you had it cooked one time in the 1990s, right? But maybe if you have it cooked a different way, and then you try it several times that way, you'll actually be like, "Oh, you know what? I actually do like eggplant." So it's not even just the food, it's the spices on the food, and so the preparation of that food. So maybe like you can't figure out why you don't like turkey burgers, but you're okay with like a piece of turkey. It's because of the different texture, the different flavors, just because it was cooked that way. But we're actually trying to figure out why our brain is saying, "Is this food?" I'm not sure.
Yeah, I had no idea. And you have a 5-year-old, so you've probably been trying to get him to eat his vegetables. How's that working out?
So it's a slow process, but you just can't give up. And so for when you're thinking about your kids, right, or whoever you're around that you want to influence,
Yeah.
the best way to influence them is to just have them see you eating the food,
Okay.
right? So we serve everything family style. So when we serve ourselves, so he sees me taking the vegetables, he sees my husband taking the vegetables, and then he's more inclined to want to do that himself and take the vegetables onto the plate. And even if he doesn't eat them, he still is like, "Oh, this is supposed to be on my plate." And he put it there.
Yeah.
So he's even more putting somebody in that power situation, right, where you have control, where they have control of what they're doing. It just makes the situation less stressful. And so just not creating any stress around the vegetables is really my main goal with him.
Yeah, that's well put. Well put. So you were talking about some of the health problems that you work with people. What links do you know of with diet and health? Because I feel like people are just starting to come around. I mean, granted, we're in Los Angeles, so you have a lot of health conscious people. You have a lot of different diet fads. But how far have we come as more of a wider, like, national culture to be able to accept that food can be medicine? Because despite my path, I was actually reminded of that in your class. I was like, yes, I haven't been taking it as seriously.
I think we're not very far along at all.
I'm just in my bubble.
Yeah. I mean, I just, on the way here, actually, I saw a news notification from like Time, and it was that Donald Trump is actually rolling back some of the regulations on the food program in our schools. So he's making them less nutritious. Like all kinds of things started to happen where they took out trans fats out of like the lunch menus and things like that, and made certain amounts of fruits and vegetables necessary for the schools to get funding. And
Yeah.
he's rolling that back. So I think
course he is.
we're going in the wrong direction as a country with that. But
Yeah.
there's definitely more awareness. with all of the podcasts and the documentaries that are out there. But I think it's becoming confusing for people because there's so much information and there's so much conflicting information that they don't know where to turn or what to believe. So they're just like, okay, I'm not even going to think about this. I'm just going to do what I want. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are in that situation who are calling me up and saying, I just watched this documentary and now I want to be plant-based. What do I need to do? How can you help me? And they're very motivated to do that. But at the same time, when they find out what that actually means, they're not quite as on board. And
Yeah.
when I talk to them about maybe some of their health conditions and what being plant-based may not be the best decision for them because they need so much more extra protein to support their stress or to, lose weight or whatever it happens to be that they personally need to do, like the diet that they think is going to work for them isn't really what's going to be beneficial. So there's always this disconnect between the mind and the body, right? For me, that disconnect was this figuring out if I actually felt good. I have this journal entry from a long time ago, and I just, the only thing I wrote was like, do I feel good? And I had no idea, and I couldn't answer the question because I had just been that frog in the boiling water, right?
Wow.
So as the water starts cold, but then the heat gets turned up really, really slowly, and you can't feel that you're getting boiled to death because you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh yeah, I feel like I did yesterday. I must feel fine. But it takes getting to that point of feeling amazing, and you don't even think you can feel amazing, to start to say, okay, well, this is where I'm supposed to be, and then this is what I'm doing now. For me, I thought I had chronic back pain. I'm in my 30s and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have back pain forever. My dad has back pain. I should have back pain, right? This is just how it is. It's my genetics. But when I got my education and I started to implement diet changes, lowering the amount of dairy, lowering the amount of gluten I was eating, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't wake up with back pain anymore. It was like an incredible awakening for me. And so that's what I try to do with other people is figure out, okay, what is the thing that's triggering your problem? Can we address it with food?
Yeah. Well, I love how knowledgeable you are. You were even pointing out certain things like coconut oil. You were talking about how some people are actually allergic to that. I think you said like a quarter of the population can be sensitive to that. So, everybody's different. But what do you know about just the average American diet and chronic inflammation? Is there more research out to kind of pinpoint that? Because I know that there's a lot of people who deny that at this point still.
Well, right. So chronic inflammation, the diet is, it's the oils, absolutely. The oils are something that we have to look at first and foremost because they're so fragile, right? You have a background with plants and you know how fragile plants are. And so we're really taking the oil from plants. We're squeezing the oil out of them. And some of the ways that is done, especially in the manufacturing process of like canola oil, for example, which is supposed to be this healthy oil. But by the time the canola oil is extracted, put into these plastic bottles, put into the grocery store, sits under the fluorescent lights, it is rancid before it even gets into your body. And rancid, what does that mean? That means it's oxidized. And when you're putting oxidized substances into your body, that's something that causes cancer, right? And that causes inflammation. And that's something that we need. The only way to get rid of that is by eating antioxidant foods. And so that means your vegetables, your things with vitamin C, with any of the ACEs, right? Vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and zinc and selenium are also going to be antioxidant, right, for our bodies. Other things like glutathione, which we can get through whey protein, is also going to help to remove all of that stuff that's going to be causing that inflammation from those oils. But we're putting so much more of that into our bodies on a regular basis with the standard American diet than we can eat the healthy stuff to counterbalance it. So so looking at your oils, looking at those fragile plant oils, anything that is made from nuts or seeds, right, should never be heated, because even that heat is going to cause it to go rancid.
No way.
So I never cook with sesame oil, right, because that's a seed. But I will use it raw, drizzled over the dish that I'm making, because that's going to keep that oil intact.
I see.
Same thing with olive oil. It can't get super hot, so I never like roast at 400 degrees with olive oil.
What do you use?
I use avocado oil because olive oil in general can take about 325 degrees, whereas coconut oil can do about 350. But avocado oil, you can heat up to 500 degrees before it's going to go rancid.
Wow.
So that's the oil that I'll use if I'm roasting vegetables in my oven.
Okay.
Right? And that can make a huge difference, especially if you have high cholesterol, because cholesterol is a sign, high cholesterol is a sign of inflammation in your arteries. And so that's what you need to control. And so just switching out that oil can make a huge difference.
Yeah. Little things. I love it. I love it. Is there any specific health issues that are tied to inflammation? I think I've seen different buzz about autoimmune, or I don't know if it was congestive heart failure, but is there any buzz about that can like trigger people to maybe have a little bit more of an impetus to jump on it, other than just, inflammation and how you feel, but to really kind of grab the reins on their health?
So I don't think there is a condition out there that isn't really rooted in inflammation. So we're talking about any kind of cardiovascular disease, right? There's inflammation in the system. Any kind of autoimmune condition, there's usually inflammation in the gut. Any kind of pain condition, there's definitely inflammation in the joints, in the spine, and any kind of condition where you're talking about your neurological status, right? So there can be inflammation just in the brain with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, dementia. There's inflammation in the brain that needs to be controlled. If you have gingivitis, you have chronic inflammation, right? So if it can be in our mouths, if you have any sort of infection, your body is inflamed. If you have sinus issues, if you have any kind of skin irritation, your body is inflamed where you have that rash or that itching. So people can actually lower their cholesterol by flossing their teeth.
Wow, I had no idea.
So because if you start to get rid of inflammation wherever it is in your body, so if it happens to be gingivitis in the mouth and you start a really good flossing remedy, then that can lower your inflammation and you can see the cholesterol numbers come down. So
That's amazing. My mind is like blown right now.
Right? Isn't that crazy? And that's not even a diet change, right? That's kind of like where I'll start with some people, because it can be these lifestyle changes that you're just trying to get a habit formed, right? So this is what we're talking about, especially for the new year. It's like, how do we make a new habit? How do we stick to it? How do we decide what we want it to be? And that's really what I try to help people figure out, because there's so many different types of personalities. out there. And some people do really well when they are paired with another person and say, okay, I'm going to, we're going to work on this problem together, or you're going to be my gym buddy, or we're going to make dinner for each other every Thursday night, right? Just to do something together. And that can work really well for some people. Or other people, if I tell them, if I give them like, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z, they're just going to be like, I never do anything anybody tells me. So if I tell them, you need to start taking a fish oil supplement, they'll just be like, there's no way I'm going to do this because you told me to do it. So
the nutritionist told me to do it, so I'm not going to.
So they have to decide on their own, right? So it's kind of like figuring out how to work with them so that they can come to that decision. So it might be presenting them with just like, oh, hey, emailing them a research study. Hey, did you see this? This is kind of cool. It's about, the condition you were talking to me about. And they were like, hey, they used fish oil in the study. I'm like, oh yeah, they did. You think I should take fish oil? Do you think you should take fish oil?
Oh my gosh. So you trick people into eating healthy, and then you teach them how to cook so that it tastes good.
Yes, because the cooking is so important.
Wow. It's such a tough thing when people look at the relationship they have with their body if they're having poor health, and it can make you feel so powerless. But the way you just link so many different health conditions to inflammation, which you can start trying to affect with your diet and lifestyle, I mean, this is huge for people. People should be feeling excited and empowered. Not that they have to be a slave to the health food store or anything like that. And it's possible to eat healthy and also, at a modest amount of money, right? No one has to go to Whole Foods and spend like $200, every time they go grocery shopping, right?
Absolutely. Like that is one of the things that people in my cooking class are always asking me, where'd you get this? Where'd you get this ingredient? Where'd you get it? And my answer is normally I got it at Ralph's, which is our local, just regular grocery store. It's not fancy. It's just the grocery store. And there's definitely ways you can find things that are fancier, that are higher end, that might be slightly better quality. But it's about starting somewhere, right? And about figuring out what one change that you can make that you'll start to feel like, oh, I did that. I didn't even think about that. For me, it was just changing out my coffee, right? Because that was something that I figured out wasn't making me feel great. It was putting me in this cycle of needing sugar in the middle of the day. And once I got rid of that and kind of switched to some teas, then I was able to break some of my sugar addictions and feel more in control of like that midday 3:00 snack. And that was kind of a beginning point where I was like, oh, I did that. I don't even want that anymore. So what else can I change? And it's a process. I've been doing this for years, and I still have things that I'm slowly changing. But it's really about what you can tolerate at the moment. And some people want to do it all. They're like, shave their head full, jump into the icy cold water. Like, let's do it now. And that's definitely possible too. And that's what it's like. Like everybody's biologically different, but they're also just their motivation is different. So finding out what that is for you is huge.
What if I was to tell you that I'm addicted to chocolate?
Well, so what kind of chocolate are you addicted to?
This bad boy right here.
Okay, I'm seeing
85 proof. There's only 5 grams of sugar in like a third of this. So each square is less than half a gram of sugar, I think I calculated. So I actually got into this chocolate after I came back from Costa Rica with parasites, and I had to go on a parasite cleanse, and I was still addicted to chocolate. So I had to find a chocolate that wasn't going to like feed my parasite. So what do you think? Does this pass the test?
Yeah, this is great. This 85% cacao is where it's at. That's where you want to be.
Yeah.
So, and do you miss the sweetness?
No, no, I don't really like it sweet at all.
And I think that's what you start to find as you shift away from eating so much sugar, is that you actually, when you put it in your mouth, you're like, oh, I this is too sweet now. It's funny, like if you have kids and the first time they have candy or chocolate or things like that, they don't like it. They'll spit it out because it's like overpowering.
Right.
And I think that happens to us once we just break that need for it. Our tastes change.
Yeah.
But chocolate is I don't have any problem with people having chocolate as long as it's super dark.
What about cheese? Because I'm also addicted to cheese. Just please don't say no. Please.
Well, you're not alone. Don't feel alone with your cheese addiction.
Cheese is my best friend.
I bet you could start. I know so many people that would come and talk to you just about cheese. Like you could just have like a cheesemonger
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, I would be like the president of the cheesemongers. And my homegirl down the street, she used to work for the largest cheese distributor in the U.S. And me and my girl, we can tear down some cheese into the night, still eating cheese.
And so, I think that cheese has a lot of great things about it, right?
Tell me.
It's got
Let me
protein.
count the ways.
It's got calcium. It's got some cheeses have good enzymes in them that are also going to help you, depending on if it's fermented. Like you can get like blue cheese, right? That's fermented. There's some probiotic in there, especially if you're getting really the high end blue cheeses. But for the most part, they are highly processed, right? I think cheese can be, well, cheese isn't one thing, right? So there's like really nice handmade cheeses that are made with raw milk, where you've got those enzymes intact as well that help you digest the lactose in the cheese. And then you've got cheeses that are made of oil, right? So it's figuring out where on the cheese spectrum you are. I always tell people, if you're going to do cheese, make sure you're doing really expensive, high-end cheese that has raw milk, if it's going to be cow's milk, or sheep's milk cheese can be a great thing to do, or goat's milk cheese. Just because these are usually a little bit lower in lactose than other cheeses. And a lot of people being 65% of the population, are really lactose intolerant. And this may or may not be you. If you're struggling with constipation and you're eating cheese, you need to stop eating cheese.
Fortunately, I am not.
There you go.
Actually, I love raw milk cheese. That's usually what I buy. I can get it at Trader Joe's. Super inexpensive. They were out of it, so I got the goat's milk. And I usually tend to try to get like a white cheddar or a mozzarella. So you can correct me if I've been misinformed, even though I don't want to know if that's the case. But I was under the impression that cheese like mozzarella and ricotta and white cheddar is healthier than, say, like a yellow cheddar or a Gouda. Did I just pick that up somewhere?
I don't know about. I would actually. I mean, Gouda is great because it has so much vitamin K in it, and vitamin K2, which is the vitamin we're missing to actually put the calcium from the cheese into our bones.
Oh, snaps. I got to start eating Gouda again.
Yeah, so it's not, you should look to see if it's colored, because I was under the impression for a long time that any yellow cheese had food coloring, but it's not true. some yellow cheese is colored with food coloring, but some of it is actually the cheese and the way it's aged that it actually is colored. But mozzarella in general, I mean, it's delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not one of like the higher vitamin cheeses, or and always go for full. If you're gonna do cheese, I always say go full fat.
Yes.
Don't do
I like that.
skim, because we need the fat. The fat actually helps us to absorb that vitamin K that it is in the cheese, it also helps us to burn it slower. So you're gonna feel fuller when you eat less of it, and you might actually eat less of it because it's triggering a leptin release, which is a hormone that is telling us, hey, all right, shut it down, we're full, stop eating. It's that sensation when you eat a piece of cheesecake and you're like, oh my God, this is so rich. That's leptin telling you, yeah, you had enough. So getting that from the full fat cheeses is really important.
Gotcha. I like that. No more low fat cheese for me. So, do you want to talk more about hormones and stuff, especially since this is a female oriented podcast, and I love some of the stuff that you were talking about in your class, especially since the Stargate beckons, and so I'm trying to be very mindful of my cycle and just be very aware. That's one thing I can pride myself in, is that I know when I'm ovulating. I know when I'm changing the cycle. But I think it's very easy to kind of dismiss how much our bodies have to do. Just the changes of our menstrual cycle. I mean, such a huge thing that allows us to have, to birth life and to grow life. And like you said earlier, women are so used to taking care of other people. A lot of times we just kind of forget that we have to really take good care of our bodies so that it can, do all the things that it was created to do.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. And it's interesting. So like we have our cycle, right? And so the first 14 days of our cycle, we're really being dominated by estrogen. And so unless you're on birth control. So if you're on birth control, most birth control is just progesterone. So we're just giving ourselves extra progesterone, and we don't become dominated by estrogen. And then the last half of the cycle is when progesterone is supposed to kick in and really give us that thickening of the uterine lining so that an egg can implant and all of that good stuff. So we are switching, right? At day 14, if you're 100% on a 28-day cycle and your ovulation is normal, that's about when it's supposed to happen, halfway through the cycle. And you're changing, right? You're having different emotions, different feelings, different things are happening to your body. A lot of us are getting skin breakouts either that week or the next week, right? And that's just something that so many people come to me and they're like, I get this acne breakout every month at this time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's because your hormones are changing. And they're like, I never thought of that, which, is interesting because it's like being so out of tune with yourself. And so how do you figure out how to control those hormones, right? And a lot of it can be done through making sure we're really taking care of our fertility, right? So we're giving our food the vitamins and minerals that we need to support making of the proper hormones. And also we're giving ourselves enough fiber and enough carbohydrates, because so many of us are going so low carb now, right? So we're giving ourselves enough carbohydrates to create things like serotonin, which enable us to really handle those mood swings a little bit better. It's why we crave it at the certain times of the month. Like those cravings are actually saying, okay, you're out of balance. You know, let's make sure that you're getting enough of whatever you're getting. I mean, it can also be that you're on an addiction cycle, so you have to figure out which it is first, which is, you know, where a little bit of testing can come in handy, and also just evaluating, right? Like actually taking the time to say, okay, this is what I ate. This is how I'm feeling. And let's see if I eat something else, if I'll feel differently. And that's where just really keeping a good journal and a good log is like the starting point. Like if you do nothing else in 2019, start keeping a little bit of a diary, especially when you're in a bad mood, right? Or you're feeling like just the day was absolute. I don't know if, can I swear on this? I don't know.
Yeah, it's Tom, you. Go ahead.
The day was absolute shit, you know? And so what happened today? And it's not just that somebody cut you off in traffic. What did you have for lunch? Did you eat breakfast? Did you not eat breakfast? Maybe you shouldn't have eaten breakfast, right? Because you had a crazy meal the night before and your body was still recovering and your pancreas still needed more time to rest. And you should have been in fasting mode when you were starting to break that fast.
There's a lot to this stuff, but you got it down.
Well, I don't know if I've got it down, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. And that's what keeps me going with it. And then I think once you kind of tune into yourself and you start to really pay attention, you get fascinated by yourself and by your body and how much it's really able to help you, right? It's able to be your friend instead of being this thing you're lugging around with you.
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of people feel that way. They're just so far away from understanding eating healthy or that their health can be connected to their diet or anything. So, yeah, it's time to waken up. 2019, I am trying to see some shifts all around. So, you know, the more each and every one of us can kind of connect with our inner self, the more that's going to start to spread. And I think it's definitely important to connect with a professional. I was super excited for your class. I actually signed up, I think it's September.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
know if you knew that. And the class was just a couple of weeks ago in December. So I have been trying the low carb diet thing for a while, and I had gained 14 pounds of really loving relationship weight. Sicilian fiance, so his love language is food for sure. And so I actually lost that weight doing a low carb thing. And it's not that I want to come off it because I'm actually not craving carbs. The other day I was at a lunch and I saw these quesadillas and they were just oozing with cheese. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go for it. And I had 2 bites and I was like, oh, like, no, I can't do it. Like, it's not even worth it. It wasn't satisfying me. But it does concern me though, especially since the Stargate beckons. I want to make sure that I'm eating properly. So what are some of the carbs that you recommend that especially women keep in their diet?
So the most important thing is to remember that vegetables are carbs. They count in the carb calories. They're low carb, but that's the one thing that with the keto craze, like people are actually cutting out vegetables that are providing so much support and so much fiber for them to help sweep out the extra estrogen and things like that. So it's really important, I think, to make sure that you're eating enough vegetables. You can have a pound of vegetables every time you sit down to eat. And it just, you know, yes, people are, sweet potatoes are great. I love that as a carb. You know, obviously don't overdo it on those, but I'm still a low carb advocate. I'm not like a keto fanatic. just because I've seen people not be able to sustain it, and it changes the hormones in such a way that if you are in ketogenesis for a long time and you come out of it, you're more likely to gain more weight back, and that creates this whole yo-yo effect, right? If you can even lose it again. And so that's my main concern with it. But I do like low carb. I think low carb is great. I usually tell people 3 servings of carbohydrates a day is usually enough for most people. So
3 glasses of wine.
that would do it.
That's where I get my carbs.
But yeah, I mean, but there's great. Whole grains are great. I love things like quinoa, right? It's got some protein in it, but it's mainly a carbohydrate. It's 60% carb. So, a half a cup of quinoa is a serving of carbohydrates. A half a cup of brown rice is a serving of carbohydrates. And doing just like high carb veggies, red beets and carrots and things that are those root vegetables are going to have, even potatoes. Potatoes are loaded with serotonin, right? That's a feel-good hormone, those white potatoes. So I'm not afraid of white potatoes. I want to feel good. I don't deep fry them, right? Don't deep fry your potatoes.
Unless it's avocado oil, right?
There you go. You're not going to get that in a restaurant, though. So.
Right. No. What about your favorite, not just carbs, but overall superfoods for women? The things that are going to really assist. I don't know if you change that up during the cycle or different time frames for what age you might be as a woman, but what do you want to share with us in that manner?
So one of the things I love are seeds. So even as you're doing your cycle, right? So the beginning of the cycle, your estrogen is higher. So you're going to be looking at flax seeds, which are going to help to balance your estrogen. Because if you're low in estrogen, they have a lot of phytoestrogens, those plant estrogens in them that are going to plug into the hormone receptors where estrogen is supposed to go. And because they're lower than estrogen, because it's a phytoestrogen, it's going to not make room for the other estrogens, and those will get eliminated out of your body. But if you're low in estrogen and you need more estrogen, then those will plug into those receptors and make you feel more balanced, because it'll actually give you estrogen. So flax seeds are super seeds at doing that, and so are pumpkin seeds. So those two, like in the first half of your cycle, are phenomenal. And then in the second half of your cycle, we're looking for things that are supporting progesterone. So things like sunflower seeds and sesame seeds are really great at doing that. So in those last 14 days, you can use those to help support that. And they're going to give you fiber, and they're going to give you minerals. You're going to get enough zinc and magnesium from those that you're going to be helping your mental health as well, because those are very important for energy, but also for creating neurotransmitters.
I love it. You were talking about not heating seeds, or I think you said nuts earlier,
right? Nuts are nut and seed oils.
Okay,
right.
But what about, I got to tell you this, because one of my favorite little snacks, my low carb snack, is I'll take a little saucepan and I'll put like pecans and walnuts in there with some coconut oil and some cinnamon, no sugar. And I toast those up, and it is like a slice of heaven. It is so delicious. Do I have to be concerned with like charring the nuts? Because I think they say that barbecued food or charred food can also make the food have more of a free radical effect.
Right. It can create carcinogens, right? And so they're everywhere. So usually doing that on the stovetop is not very hot. All right. Even toasting them in the oven with the same spices and the same oils, you should be okay if you're at a lower temperature oven, because it doesn't take much heat to toast nuts. And so I feel like that's what I do too, right? You get those raw nuts and you get your oils, your coconut oil, your avocado oil, or even butter, because butter is highly stable at high temperatures, right? And so you can use that on the nuts to toast and roast them yourself, because you're going to be doing that at a lower temperature, at a more controlled temperature than the dry roasted nuts that they're fast firing and in the factories.
God, thank goodness, because I did not want to give up my nuts. Oh my gosh. So I have to tell you this because I was in your class and I was just joyfully, because you don't understand, like, I buy bags and bags of nuts at Costco, bags and bags. And here I am in your class telling, with both my hands up, talking about having 2 handfuls of nuts every single day. And I saw a little glimmer in your eye where you're like, you don't say. And the other people in the class, I don't think they noticed. And as I'm continuing to talk about my 2 handfuls of nuts daily, I'm feeling so stupid. And I'm like, I gotta at least go there a little bit. So I came back and I told my fiance how I accidentally said that and how stupid I felt. And so pretty much every single day he teases me like, oh, my 2 handfuls of nuts.
Well, yeah, well, at least it's a handful, not a mouthful, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. 2 handfuls. Yep. Thank you for following up with that. That was great. So, okay, so this is going to be released January 2019. Y'all have no excuse, okay? We're ready for you. We've facilitated so you can get going with it, clean up. And I mean, not to be all cliche with holidays and stuff, but they're good for structuring. We all have different seasons. And I think, coming out of January, especially if you're going hard in the holidays, eating really fatty foods, overeating, it makes sense that, the new year is a great time to clean up, let your body cleanse a bit, your liver. What are your top recommendations? Just a few that you want to share.
So the first thing I would do is you should join my Facebook group that's called the Vitality Seekers.
Oh.
And so that's just a really great place to meet other people that are like-minded and get the support and get your questions answered and just talk to people and get recipes. And we do like some challenges from time to time on there. I'm planning a souping challenge, which I'm really excited about, just to get people into, like, it's winter. We want soups, and souping is kind of the new juicing.
Okay.
So it's a great way just to increase your vegetable intake and still make and learn some recipes, right? Just to put a little twist on what you might be doing, or just to figure out, okay, this is something I can do, and then I can batch cook it and I can freeze it.
Yeah.
So number one, I would say join Vitality Seekers.
Vitality Seekers.
Number two is just try to eat out less. I think that can make a big difference. And you don't have to cook necessarily, right? You can just make sure you're buying things that you can make into a salad, right? A can of tuna fish, a bag of lettuce, some cherry tomatoes, right? A handful of sunflower seeds. That's a nice salad. That can be dinner, and it's cheap, and you're doing it yourself.
It's
and
quick.
It's quick. It's faster than you'll get takeout.
Right.
So just, finding those little recipes that are your go-tos and your just weekday night savers can be really important. And then if you haven't tried just controlling your feeding window, right? This is fasting is becoming really popular, and I love to help people get into doing what intermittent fasting, but daily intermittent fasting, where you're just really controlling the time of day that you're eating. So our pancreas really stops and wants to go to sleep at about 7 o'clock at night. So if you are feeding it after that time, you are not helping yourself. You're not helping yourself with weight loss. You're not helping yourself control your diabetes. It's a time where we just need to shut down. So if you can say, okay, well, I'm going to eat whatever I want for 12 hours a day, but only from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Try that. And I think you'll see a huge difference.
I like that. I'm going to try. I kind of changed my circadian rhythm a bit. I've been getting up earlier, and I get home at 5 o'clock, and I'm starving. I'm ready to go. So sometimes I push it out. I'm snacking away, and I'm like, oh, don't want to eat too soon. But yeah, no, I didn't know that about the pancreas. That's great.
Yeah, it's hard to do though, right? Because we're waiting because everybody works until 7 o'clock or later.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my man to come home so I
Yeah.
can eat with him. So I'm like, I'll just snack between now and dinner.
Right. And so it becomes making that decision for yourself, right? If you're able to do that and you can do that, it can make a huge difference. Even for some people, it's like saying, okay, well, maybe I'm going to actually have dinner at work,
Yeah.
and pack my dinner. And then what becomes the real meal with your spouse might actually be breakfast.
Oh, okay.
If you guys
That's a
have that
good
time in the morning.
idea. Because in the morning, you're usually all refreshed. You just slept. And dinner is like, whew, you're
Yeah.
just
And
trying to calm down.
right. And you don't necessarily need food to connect, right? We always connect. I'm Italian too, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, love language is food. I love that you took yours to another level, or your love language is food is medicine.
Oh, I like that. I might
Yeah,
have to use
yeah, go
that.
ahead.
But yeah, it's just figuring out what that connection can be. It might just be, a fancy cup of herbal tea,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we're connecting and we're unwinding, but it's not necessarily that evening meal. Or if you can figure out how, like, to meet for lunch, if you're close enough, it's like, let's have a fancy lunch, or let's have our meal be lunch instead of dinner, that we're connecting and we're sharing.
Yeah, I like that. Manja, manja, manja. So, just kind of following up on that, because you're not the only person who told me about women's bodies are kind of more designed, kind of to process one alcoholic serving per day. I've had a lot of people tell me that, including medical doctors and stuff. And I mean, I don't necessarily have the frame of someone. I have no reason other than being Irish to think that I should be like genetically superior at my ability to metabolize alcohol. But even people who know me from my past know that that's not necessarily the case. I'm not necessarily metabolizing it so quickly. So I was wondering if you could kind of clear it up, because I have this vicious cycle, especially now that I'm with an Italian. So how does can alcohol actually help food, or does it hinder it? Because I tell him, I'm like, I cannot eat Italian without red wine. That's just how it is. So I'm not going to eat anything heavy. Meats, cheeses, there's a lot of food that I don't know if it's just my general makeup, because I didn't grow up with heavy food. I grew up with super healthy hippie parent food. But what is the relationship? I was wondering actually yesterday, as I was trying to prepare some notes, am I making it more difficult on my body, on my liver, when I'm eating super fatty, heavy food and guzzling a bottle of red wine? Or am I helping? Please say the latter.
Well, so I mean, the the heavier foods, right? More fat and more protein help to balance out the alcohol, right? So because alcohol is a carb,
Right.
so whenever we eat anything, we want to make sure we're eating all three of the macronutrients: carbohydrates, fat, and protein, because this helps to keep our blood sugar more stable. So if you are ultra loading the carbs, which you are with alcohol, then ultra loading the fat and the protein can help to slow that absorption as well, and just slow everything down a little bit. I mean, alcohol is not, it's not your friend. I
Cheese
definitely,
is my friend.
cheese is can be better than alcohol if you're not lactose intolerant or have casein allergies. It's a personal decision, right? Alcohol is so personal. So it's one of those things like you're Irish, so you're probably half rebel at least.
At
So
least
I
50%.
can't, I don't want to be the one to tell you to take away your alcohol because then you're just gonna be like, I'm not gonna do that.
You're so smart.
But for me, I used to drink a lot, and I was like, I could drink people under the table. That was like that was my superpower. And you get to that point where you can tolerate it. And that was going back to the thing I was talking about earlier, like, do I actually feel good? And I had to stop the alcohol to figure out what my good was. And once I got there, then when I did drink alcohol, obviously your tolerance is much lower because you haven't built up the tolerance for it. But you realize how toxic it is and how bad it makes you feel. And that you were probably just ignoring that in some way, or your body was finding another way to cope rather than just being like, whoa, what's going on? So it's a tricky situation with alcohol. You do so everybody's like, oh, but red wine has resveratrol, and I'm like, yeah, you have to drink like 70 glasses of wine to get enough resveratrol that they're using in the studies. That like
That's me in like a month.
no,
Does that
like in
count?
one day
Oh gosh.
to use the amount of that they're using in the studies to say it's
gosh.
beneficial.
So does the wine though, because you said that protein and fat will help with the carbohydrates in the wine, right? But does wine in any way, is it just in my head? Because I feel like red wine will settle my stomach if it's full of fat and protein. Have I just convinced myself of this, or is there a scientific thing going on?
Well, I mean, it's a little acidic, right? So if you it can help to actually, help your stomach acid be a little stronger and break the food down. You might be finding that, like, because, people are using apple cider vinegar, right, as a constant thing. I mean, wine is vinegar
Right.
before it's vinegar.
Right.
It's
yeah.
wine, right? Wine.
Yeah.
Vinegar is wine.
Right.
And so you are helping a little bit, but it has all that sugar in it.
Right. That's why I love
But it's
it.
probably
I
also
drink
relaxing you.
Dry bread.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And red is better, usually better than white just because it does have the flavonoids in it but it relaxes you. And when you drink, food tastes better. It actually smells better.
Really?
It increases your sense of smell. So when you have alcohol, that's why you get hungry, because you're like, everything smells amazing. You're like, I just need to eat that because it smells so good. And so it's harder to stop yourself from overeating when you're drinking, because you're more inclined to be like, oh my gosh, I have to have this. And it's an olfactory thing that happens.
Oh gosh. All right. 2019, I'm going to try to cut back to half a glass during the week, and then maybe 2 on a Friday or Saturday night, maybe something like that.
Sure.
Or Saturday, Sunday. I like how you're telling me what I want to hear because you know better. So I have a question, Carrie. If you were about to be stranded on a deserted island and you were given one choice to have any food that you could have, but you only got one choice, what would your super choice be that you were going to eat forever on this deserted island?
Oh, wow. Because that, like, like, do you go for something? Because are you going to die on this island? So should you just have what you want, or should you?
Either or, yeah. An asteroid is headed to Earth, and you have a moment in like Whole Foods. You can just, everybody's running. You can just eat whatever you want. What are you gonna do?
if I can eat whatever I want, I'll probably eat meatballs.
Ooh, meatballs. Yeah.
And I'm a meatball girl. That's one of the things that I taught my son to make. He's 5. He can make meatballs,
Oh, nice.
like by
Yeah.
himself,
Wow, that's impressive.
but nothing else. But yeah, but if I was gonna like try to be the lone survivor and
Yeah.
like want to be, then I think I would have. I think it would have to be. Gosh, this is really hard because it's not like a dish. I mean, meatballs is more than one thing, but
Right. But still, but that counts. You could just be on a deserted island with like tons of meatballs, just having a party for one.
yeah. I think it would be soup. I think it would
Soup.
be
Oh, that's
like
smart.
I would have
Yeah.
like cabbage soup. Like that would be my thing.
Ah, okay. That's the Pennsylvania in you coming out. Cabbage soup. All right. That's smart. I had asked that question. Well, this came up years and years ago when I was in San Diego, and it was a group of people I worked with. And not to get weird into stereotypes, because God knows I love Mexicans, but 3 of my Mexican friends were all like beans, beans, beans. And I was like, beans? And they're like, yeah, it's got protein, it's got fiber, it's got this. And then I'm like, dang, it is the magical fruit, isn't it? So I was so impressed with that. Does that make sense to you with your background?
Yes. Although a lot of people can't handle some of like the anti-nutrients in beans. So
There's anti-nutrients in there. Oh yeah, beans gave me gas for like forever when I first moved to San Diego. I was eating beans all the time. And I used to carry Beano with me, and my Mexican homies would like just they thought it was the funniest thing, and they didn't need it cuz I mean, you develop the enzymes. It's the same enzymes required to break down like sulfuric vegetables, right?
well, some people you can build up a tolerance. So if you go in slow and your body can adjust to them. But some people never really get there. And then it can be a food because you're getting the gas, right? And the bloating, it's one of those things that's causing inflammation, if that's you, right? I would rather have like pumpkin seeds, right? That would be, again, the protein, the fat, the fiber.
Yeah. That would be easier. Plus, it'd just be easier to carry around protein seed or like the seeds on the island rather than have like canned beans and like a backpack and like,
And then you could plant the seeds and you could
yeah.
get pumpkins.
Oh my gosh, you're so smart. Oh, so smart. When I was in Costa Rica, I was eating beans 3 times a day. 3 times a day. That's we were on this rainforest preserve, so you didn't get to choose what you ate, but there's a lot of beans, and then I became a super bean eater. Love
Well,
them.
there's a lot of research out there that is really based on what your ancestors ate is really those are the best foods for you. So I think what's happening too with a lot of people, we're developing issues. So our bodies are intolerant to these foods we're not familiar with from an evolutionary perspective. So if you are Italian and you know your genetics, then the foods that the Italians have eaten, for generations and generations are going to be less inflammatory for you. So, and if you're Mexican and you're used to eating beans 3 times a day, that's going to be less inflammatory. Italians eat a lot of beans too, but we eat
Oh, okay.
like my ancestors more like the lentils and the white northern beans, right, rather than the pinto beans or the black beans. So it can make a difference if you kind of stick to your foods of your ancestors.
Wow. Yeah. So I actually don't do very well with tomato, which is tough because Nick's dad just cooked up like all this sauce. We're like sauced out, and I mean I love it. It's like the best sauce I've ever had, and I was having it on cauliflower, my little fake
I
pasta.
love that, yeah.
Yeah, but as much as I love the flavor, it doesn't really agree. It just I feel the gas in my stomach after having tomato sauce. I'm like, I don't really like that.
Yeah, and it's a nightshade. Tomatoes are nightshade vegetables, so they can cause a lot of inflammation in some people.
Dang. Dang. Well, hopefully I'll get over that. Maybe I just need to have it 3 times a day.
Tomato soup for breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I'm definitely going to start doing the seeds thing that you recommended. Yes, seeds 2019. I'm all about the seeds for sure. For sure. Carrie, thank you so much for being on and giving us some great tools. You guys have no excuse. Clean it up, time to clean house, your New Year's resolutions, or whatever excuse that you need to treat your body as your friend, as you said, or your temple. And you, just to kind of rehash, uh, Vitality Seekers is a Facebook group,
Right,
right?
yes.
So we can all jump on that. And then Two Hearts Nutrition. And do you want to tell us again, what is some of the health conditions that you've worked with?
Right. So, any kind of gastrointestinal issues that you're having, digestive issues, heartburn, things like that, I work with a lot of people to resolve that. And then just weight loss is a big one. I work with people who have thyroid conditions and other autoimmune conditions. I've worked with several people with Parkinson's. So, and arthritis is a huge thing too. Just pain management can be really helpful. And then if you have high cholesterol and you're looking for ways to get off your statin drug, if you're having side effects from that, which is huge for so many people, they don't realize that the statin is actually, causing some of their memory issues or some of their joint issues or some of the weakness, muscle weakness issues that they're having. That can be life changing for people that are on those drugs that really don't need to be. There's a list of criteria for people that should be on them, and doctors are over prescribing. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then also LACC in the Valley, right?
Yeah, LAVC. Yeah,
LAVC.
LA Valley College. Next February 17th, whatever that Tuesday is, around the 17th is when the cooking classes start. The week before is my knife skills class. So if you want to get comfortable in the kitchen, if that's like the first
Yeah.
phase of just like, okay, what do I do with this knife and how do I use it and not cut myself? I'm there to help you do that.
Nice. Dice it up. Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for being here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Domination.